All right, thanks, Pauline Clayton. So for families that are watching this video, the purpose of it is we've had some questions as far as what lunch will look like this year in the elementary schools. And to Clayton and I and Polly, so Polly's from Food Services, and Clayton and I are the building principals at West. We're starting to live and breathe this, and it's starting to make more sense. But for our families hearing it for the first time, I had texted Polly the other day, the director of our food services, and said, hey, could we jump on a quick meeting, but then just record it so we can talk about what this looks like for families this year. So for Clayton and I, one of the tasks we've been given in order to get kids back into the schools in an in-person setting is to limit the number of kids in mixing, for example, in spaces like our cafeteria. So our cafeteria, we will have a schedule where kids eat in the classroom some days and in the cafeteria some days. So we can probably get into the weeds here, Clayton, but we can keep our schedule, so to speak, for when we get back to a real normal setting. But right now, when kids are scheduled to go to the lunch, their lunchtime will always be the same, but they'll either be going to the cafeteria or their classroom. Am I making sense so far, Clayton?
Yep, and just to clarify, it's an every other day piece. So on a day A, your child may eat in the cafeteria, then day B, they eat in class. Next day is day A, they eat in the cafeteria. It flip-flops back and forth. So it's pretty easy for the kids and you to remember. Yesterday was a cafeteria day, today is a classroom day.
And we will provide a lunch menu like we have. It will be a little bit more detailed for our building. It will say, you know, for my child, if they're in this classroom, well, let's look at the schedule for today. Well, here's the menu. Usually it was one menu item for that day or one box. Now it will be, okay, are we eating in the classroom or are we eating in the cafeteria? And I was mentioning this to my son because we kind of like to use our own kids to kind of think this out. And for me as a child, I would eat anything. My mom always would say, like, I'm sorry you thought you had a choice. So whatever was on the menu, I would eat. For me in school, if I were here today, Polly, I would never look at the menu. Sorry, because I would eat whatever was up for that day, I would eat. And it was just, that's how I rolled. But I unfortunately, or fortunately, have some, they're not picky. They just know what they like. I have some picky eaters. So for them, I actually have to look through with my boys, like, this is your menu for today. And they're going to have to decide whether or not we pack something at home or not. But I was telling my son, I'm like, hey man, if it's spaghetti in the cafeteria and you wanted it, well, sorry, bud, spaghetti, you're in the classroom today and that's not your choice. So it's not like my picky eater can go through and say, well, I know I'm in the cafeteria, but I want the box lunch, or I'm in the classroom, but I want the lunchroom lunch. It's nope, it's two totally separate menus. So I wish my kids ate like I did, but they don't. So I think a question that we would have, Polly, is if you can walk us through kind of what the day will look like either in the cafeteria or the room and what box lunches are. And are you okay if I share that screen again?
Yes.
And we should preface it with, this could change the menu. This is just our draft that we're discussing today. So Clayton, do you want to maybe walk us through breakfast before we jump to that, just so people know we are still doing breakfast?
Yep, so we'll have breakfast in the morning. When your students come, they can come to the cafeteria. They can have breakfast like they've always had. For breakfast this year, though, to keep things moving in the cafeteria and to not get too crowded, there's only one option for breakfast. So no longer is there a choice of this or that for breakfast. Whatever's on the menu, that's what's being served for breakfast that day. So typically the cafeteria opens at 8 o'clock. Students can start eating at 8 o'clock, and then we want students back in the classroom by 8:25. Class starts at 8:30. So kids have from 8 to 8:25-ish to eat. We'd be better if it was 8 o'clock to 8:15 or so. It's through, but that's our breakfast menu.
So, and I apologize, I got distracted there for a moment by a text message. Did you get a chance to talk about bringing that to the rooms?
I did not, no.
Something we want to discuss now?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. One of the changes we'll have, so Polly, and this is, I mean, I'm actually glad that people hear us talking about this because everything is so fluid this year with what we have to do and what we're setting up for, that what we had talked about was kids actually going directly to their rooms in the morning with breakfasts. And part of the reason being, if we have everybody mixing in the cafeteria before school, it really defeats the purpose of, once they go to their classroom, trying to keep all of the kindergarten kids together for the most part, or depending on the health of the community, just their class together. So we're trying to look at how we limit kids and how they go. So does that make sense?
Yes, so
Okay.
students who would like to have breakfast will go into the cafeteria, select their breakfast, and bring it to their classroom.
Yeah, and prior to 8 o'clock, we do have it staffed, and part of it's just, it is a staffing issue of how we run and manage the flow of a building. So, but prior to 8 o'clock, typically we'll have plenty of space and we'll make sure that they're spaced out, but then we will start sending kids to their classrooms. So, and Polly, when we talk about box lunches, let me bug you again about some terminology that goes to back in the day too. Do you want to talk a little bit about the lunch menu that they're used to? I think this will help transition to when we talk about the box lunch part of it though.
Okay, so we of course have very specific guidelines when we plan the menus. We have to have specific amounts of fat, saturated fat, no trans fats. We have to include different colored vegetables and different quantities. So while we meet all those guidelines, we also, it's very important to us, we also want to make sure that the students enjoy the lunch. And so we give them choices normally, but this year to begin with, because we want the students to move through efficiently, we are not offering choices in the classroom. So the classroom diners will have what is on the printed menu. In the cafeteria, they will have one option. If they're a cafeteria diner that day, they will have one option in addition to the printed menu. So for example, if they have a super deli sub on the menu, but they would prefer a chef salad, that will be available to them. Normally, we give them vegetable options and fruit options. We are not going to do that when we begin the school year. It's one item or the chef salad option in the cafeteria, and then have the students proceed on their way.
So that's the menu that we're used to seeing. So this would be the menu, and we will, again, this is a draft that people are seeing. I don't want them locked into this because we will send out one that's more, you know, you're providing for the district, so then at the building level, we have to provide specifically which classroom. So they're used to seeing that. The part that's different, and the part that I said, remind me on box lunches, I've been very specific, even with talking with adults, that we're not going to call it a bag lunch. And it's nothing against you, Polly. There's, when you talk about stigma in food services, there's that thought of, well, this bag lunch is a super limited thing, and that is not the case. And I looked at the menu that you put together, and frankly, I was pumped that you could pull together such a good offering for in the classroom eating, which we're not used to. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just we're not used to that model where we split the kids and say, well, some are going to eat here and some are going to eat here, and now we have two menus. So some of it's similar, but some of it's different. And can you walk us through a little bit on the box lunch part of it?
Yes, so the reason the box lunch menu is different from the cafeteria dining lunch menu is because a lot goes on when you're serving hundreds of students in one building. A lot goes on right before the food service begins. And so we have to be very careful about food safety. We have to take the temperatures of the food, and we have to make sure that what we're serving are very specific with time and temperature. So to do that and make sure that classroom and cafeteria diners have food at the right temperature, we had to change the classroom dining menu. So the first 2 weeks of the classroom dining menu will be a deli sandwich, veggies, another accompaniment, fruit and milk. And then on the third week, we introduced a little more variety. For example, there is sliced turkey and cheese lunch kit that we know the students will enjoy. We also realized that we could offer the roasted chicken fillet. So it's a muscle meat, it's not breaded, and that we can pack appropriately temperature-wise and get to the students in the classroom. So some of the menus in the classroom are very similar to what is being served in the cafeteria. We know that we put a lot of effort into it to make sure that the students would enjoy it. For example, classroom and cafeteria diners will have a cheese pizza lunch kit. Classroom diners will have a wow butter sandwich, which is a soy butter.
Yeah, we had to talk about that, didn't we? We better make sure we explain what wow butter is.
It's a soy product that's called wow butter. It's like sun butter, if people are familiar with that. The wow butter tastes a lot like peanut butter, which is one of my favorites. But it doesn't introduce any risk to the students who have allergies to peanut.
So just to clarify that, Polly, for all the parents out there and kids, wow butter sandwich is kind of the same as a peanut butter sandwich.
Yes, it tastes like a peanut butter sandwich. It is just not made with peanut butter. We avoid peanut butter in our school meals program because of the students that have severe peanut allergies.
Which brings up the good point of, and this is something that we'll work into our messaging too, and as a yearly, people are used to hearing it, we really need to be aware of what we're sending in our cold lunches. So I use, like I said, use my family, for example, when my boys bring a lunch, I need to be aware of foods that we should typically avoid, but then also classroom teachers do an excellent job of sharing any specific allergies in those classrooms. So it's common. But no, I appreciate the work that you guys have done, and I like how you brought up that as the weeks go on, we may add more, we do add more. That makes total sense. It's the same thing we do in an elementary classroom, that you don't jump right in the deep end. You start introducing everything from the start, and then you add on it as the year goes on.
That's right. And we certainly, we do have a gradient plan for slowly adding items in so it doesn't become complicated for students, parents, or instructors. Also,
sorry, go ahead, Polly.
I was going to say that both for breakfast and lunch, all of the items will either be packed in containers so students can select them themselves, or they will be served by the food and nutrition staff. Students won't touch serving utensils or condiment containers. All the students will touch is a nice clean tray from the cafeteria. Also, for breakfast and lunch, when they get to the end of the serving line, a cashier will enter their PIN number on to a keypad so the students aren't touching keypad.
And I know we're getting toward the end of, at least I feel like we're getting toward the end of our time in this meeting here, which for people that keep watching, it would be, I think, wise, Clayton, for you and I to work in some of those discussions of things that parents will see that will be different. Like in the past, the kids would see their teacher come with them to lunch. What we've done this year is we've flipped that to be the teachers will have teacher-led recess where the teachers go with the kids outside to recess, and we'll have other staff supervising the lunchrooms and the classrooms. And I think Clayton did a good job working that in where it's the same person in the rooms. And
Just to expand on that, Mr. Martinson, so we're going to have a staff member who goes with the same class to the cafeteria and to the classroom. This reduces exposure for our staff and reduces exposure for our students. So the same staff member will go with the kids to the lunchroom, servery as we call it, and they'll also go with those same class and eat in the classroom.
do you want to mention the hand washing that applies to both the lunchroom and recess, Clayton?
Yep, so one of our plans is to have kids wash their hands before they go to the cafeteria to get their lunch, or before they eat their lunch in the classroom, and they will wash their hands afterwards. And the same applies to recess. So when students go to recess, they will all wash their hands before they go to recess. And when they come back in from recess, they'll wash their hands again. So lots of hand washing protocols. It's one of our biggest things we can do to mitigate any spread of any disease, including the common cold or flu or strep or COVID. So we're really going to stress a lot of hand washing at all times possible.
We did talk too about how I can definitely see hand sanitizer coming into play when we're in a pinch, but we would and do plan to really focus more on soap and water and just good general habits that, well, I mean, we train on it at home too, but we reinforce it at school. So I'm trying to think of the other questions that we had from families or staff, but I think those were kind of the big ones, Polly, of like, walk us through, like, what are these box lunches? Because right now they're starting to hear about this happening, but they haven't seen the menus yet. And like I said, you know, food services will provide us the menu, but from the building level, we have to do a better job of explaining what this rotation is. And for those of you that were blessed with an eater like me, no problem, Polly. We just line up and thank you for the food and we roll on. But for those with picky eaters or those that know what they like to eat, they'll have to pay attention to the menus even closer. So
I want to commend Polly and her team, Sean, with all the changes we make at the building level right now, all the different things we've had to accommodate for. The service department has done an outstanding job doing the same thing with having to accommodate and eat in the classroom and eat in the cafeteria. They've done a great job. So thanks to Polly and her team.
And Polly, I do enjoy lunches, so I don't stomach well, no pun intended, people that complain about our food services without trying it first. You guys do an excellent job of offering quite a bit, especially with all the rules and guidelines you get to follow.
Well, thank you. And I eat it every day myself, so. And I'm a registered licensed dietitian and I'm particular.
So you don't just play one on TV, you actually know what you're talking about.
Right.
All right, thank you, Polly and Clayton.
You're welcome. Let's remind families to complete their applications for educational benefits. And that will allow families to potentially be able to have meals at no charge. So based on their income, if their application is approved, free or reduced, they can have meals at no charge. This year, we are not offering the breakfast at no charge to families who can afford it and complete an application.
It's important to remind families too that there are multiple ways to do that. You could do it on the Infinite Campus Parent app. You can do it on the website. You can actually fill it out and turn it in, the paper version, to your secretary here at Geraldine or Ms. Surface or Ms. Kilpatrick, or bring it to your teacher and they will turn it in for you.
Very
so
good.
I got dibs on the other part of it too. Even if you don't think you will qualify for reduced meals, there are significant funds and other strings attached for your school district, your school, your child related to those forms. So even if you don't think you'll qualify, if you don't think about it, it totally makes sense. But we do have an entire stream of funding from the federal government that the more people that fill out the forms, the more funding we have and the more supports we can offer to families, even outside of food services. So I know it doesn't make sense, Polly. I just tell people don't think about it and it will make sense. Just fill out the form, even if you don't think you qualify or even if you don't want it. That's the part I think we hit before too as well. I don't want any, I provide my own lunch. I know, but there's a whole stream of funding that we're losing because people aren't filling those out. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.